Hello and welcome to the next episode in this tutorial series, and this episode will focus on lights and lighting and light maps. This is something that was mentioned in previous videos but never got into because it's a large subject and I wanted to give it its own section to cover it in adequate detail. Now, lights are all found under the Markers tab under the Player Start here. White light, red light, green light, blue light, yellow light, purple light and cyan light. Now the only difference between these icons is the actual colour of the light in your scene. So obviously white light is white light and red light is red light, and you can tell from the colour of the icon what colour the light is. Other lights you can see are down here past the trigger zones, which we'll cover next time. These are spotlights. Now the difference between a regular light such as this white light and a spotlight such as this one is the spotlight has a direction, so you can use the widget to control the orientation of the spotlight to point it in a very specific direction, whereas the standard light is what's known as an omni light. It casts its light in every direction. So this might be used for highlighting a particular place, whereas this is used for general lighting of a scene. Okay. One other thing I'm going to talk about is light maps. Now I've not covered these yet because it's quite an involved subject. So first of all, I'm just going to place some lights around my scene. I'm going to focus on the bunker first. So what I'd like to do is have a light inside the bunker and a couple of lights outside the bunker. So inside we'll pick a nice a blue light. Now it's easy to see it out here. You see the lights themselves have a green receptacle. This denotes the type of it's static or dynamic. You can use the plus and minus keys to increase and decrease the radius of the light, so it's a very focused, concentrated light, or it's a very wide open area light. You can also press the Y key to turn the receptacle red, and then again to turn it back to green, and this controls if the light is static or dynamic. Now the main reason for this is dynamic lights, represented by green, aren't affected in the light mapping process, whereas static lights are. So I'll demonstrate what this means. I'll take my blue light and I'll place it just inside the bunker here, because I want it lighting up the bunker in a nice blue light on the inside, but I want the outside to have natural lighting. So I will take a yellow light, no, a white light. I'll place it here, just outside the bunker. Then I'll press Y to make that static and left click it in the scene, and now I will save it under new iteration. Point 8. Okay, so if we test our game, let's bring this start marker back a bit because I want to see it from a distance too. So if we test game, preparing vegetation, dynamic lights, installing physics, there's an option in the bars menu that's now quite relevant. If you press tab twice to get to this, and down here on shared options, under lighting, you see pre-bake and real-time. Real-time lighting is lighting that's generated every frame, every instant, depending on what lights are in the scene. Whereas pre-baked is shadows baked onto the terrain based upon where the lights were when the baker was run. The main reason for doing this is you can get some very nice shadow detail in your scene for very little cost in terms of performance, because you've baked the lights into place rather than having the computer process the lights every frame of every cycle. It can take a lot of effort, especially if you have a lot of lights in your scene. Now if we come over here, we walk through our little trees. Now I've placed those lights down, and you'll be forgiven for thinking that I've not done anything, because you can't really see the effect. If you go in here, there's no blue light, there's no white light out here. It's because I'm using a pre-baked light system, and those are static lights. If I switch to real time, you can see it's just got a little bit lighter, and if I go in here, it's just a little bit blue. Now I'll switch that back again so you can see the pre-bake doesn't have my static light detail, but the real time does. Now I'm going to run now what's called a light mapper, and this is achieved by holding down shift and pressing the F keys, F1, F2, F3 and F4. F3 is the best light mapper to run for testing. F4 includes occlusion, which will take a lot longer to process, and for testing purposes isn't that relevant. So if you hold down shift and press F3, this will be a full light mapping process without occlusion. Now this process can take maybe a few minutes to run. It depends on the size of your level, because it has to break down your level into individual bits and then run processes on all of them times by how many lights are affecting them. So as you can imagine, a small level like this can take a minute or so, but a very large level can take proportionally longer. I will break the video because it's pointless watching this and there's nothing happening here apart from processes, so I'll come back in a second. Okay, I've resumed the recording now. It's nearly finished the process. It was about a minute. It was about enough time to make a cup of tea, which is always nice. Now, just finishing off the process now, and it will be ready any minute now. Right, now as you can see, there is differences to be noted. The blue light is now present. The blue light is now present in real time and in pre-bake. You'll notice that it got a little bit brighter. Real time and pre-bake, because the real-time lighting isn't as potent as the pre-bake. Also, you notice the shadow shift compared to the real-time and the pre-bake, because the light mapper not only bakes lights into the scene, it also calculates better shadows. You'll see here it's like this jag where the shadow has been roughly placed on, whereas on the pre-bake it's lovely and smooth and rounded. It's had more time to create a more realistic depth plane, so it's much nicer than having it real time, and it's much less intensive on your processes because it's just baked onto the terrain now. So if I come out here, now this light which I placed here, you probably don't notice it doing anything, but I placed it there because of what I'm going to do next, which is the sliders, the texture sliders. So if I stand here so I can see everything, double tab to get into the screen, and over here under visual settings we have lots of things we can play with. In fact, let me get a bit further back so you can see it easier. Okay, that's about there. Now you can see those rocks are very highly illuminated because they're being illuminated from the skylight and the denali light we placed in the scene, and they're being very, very lit up. It's almost Not almost, it is too bright. So now we need to change the sliders. Typically, or specifically, ambience level. The ambience is the ambient light in the scene. And the surface level is also a generic overage of light in the entire scene. If you took these two down to 0, you'd have blackness. Or you would have blackness if we didn't have dynamic lights in the scene. For example, the ambience level to full is just a complete washout in light, whereas down to 0 is very dark. The surface level also increases the ambience of the light and decreases it to almost nothing. If I go back into the scene now, the only light in the scene is these reflections. Probably because this door has a reflection map. So if I go back into my settings and just bring it up a little bit, like this, like that. Now, you notice the rocks have lost that insane glow. The door is still very shiny, but that's because it's a shiny door. Another slider to consider is surface sun factor, currently to 100. When you're using pre-baked lights, you want to turn that off. Thusly, it will shift the lighting system to use the pre-baked static lights rather than the general ambient lights. Here I'm using the lighting, I'm liking that less and less. I am going to replace that for a more dark rock texture, because the bright yellow of the rock isn't working in this scene anymore. It was a nice find, but for this particular scene it doesn't work as well as I would have liked, so I will change that. That's for over here. The trick to this section is just tweaking the sliders and the settings to get the level of light and shadow that you want for your particular scene. If you've got a happy, bright scene, you're going to want it nice and bright and ambient. If you've got a dark, foreboding scene, you want to keep it dark and gritty and grainy. Also, fog. If we stand here and look over there, we see miles into the distance. Now, the fog nearest and the fog distance can be set to adjust how far away the fog is and how close it is to you. So if it's far away, you'll be able to see it. If it's right up close, it's in your face. The distance can never be less than the nearest. It's kind of a range, the fog range in between these two values. If it's both down like this, it'll be right up in your face. If this is far up, you'll probably never see the fog. There's no fog in this scene now, for all intents and purposes. But it's good to have fog because it kind of helps blend the background into the foreground, and you can actually add a colour hue to it as well. I'm in a forest and I want a bit more green. Maybe bring the light down a bit, a bit less surface level, that's much too high for this scene. As you can see, from just messing with the sliders, I've created a much more atmospheric forest scene. Maybe a bit less red, a bit less blue to amplify the green. I don't want it sinister poison green, so let's just have a bit more red in there. There we go. Intensity from very light fog to incredibly thick fog. I mean, that is just like straight out of a... Oh, it's like poison. Dangerous. I don't want it as too much. I want it about there. So you just tweak the sliders to suit your scene. The scene you're trying to make. I mean, I quite like this. It's like, ooh, going through the deep, dark, spooky forest. And the abandoned bunker over there. I'm still not happy with the surface light levels. I'm going to drop that down a bit more. There we go. Yes. Yeah, it's a lot better now. I still don't like that. I would change that. If I was turning this into a full game, I would change that. it offers too much contrast now for my liking. I would delete that and I'd use rocks. In fact, let's add another light here while I'm over here now. So if I press escape, it will remember all those settings, by the way. You won't see them in the editor, which is nice and bright and clear for editing, but it will show it in the game. And in here, I want a magical purple light. We press Y to make it static, and the page down will drop it into the scene. Left click to place. Now you can see it started affecting the floor already. Moved a bit further down, maybe a bit into the tent like that. Yeah? And then we'll test again, and then we'll rebake the light maps, because the baked light maps are baked from the 2 lights I placed down initially. So any more lights I place down, I must rerun the light mapper every time I want to update the static lights in the scene. So once the game starts, after it's initialized the physics, we have our lovely poisonous scene, and we will go to our encampment. As you can see, there's no lights here. Tab. It's on pre-baked, so there wouldn't be. If I switch to real time, we'll get a slight purple hue. And you can see it on the reflections of these chairs. Oh, I've still not moved that grass. So if I go back to pre-bake, tab out, hold and shift and press F3, it will run the light mapper. Now, as before, I'm going to break the process. Sorry, I'm not going to break the process. I'm going to break the video and then come back to it when it's nearly finished. Because staring at the light map for 2 minutes is not something you need to do. And I may or may not make more tea. I'm just going to come back in now that the process is nearly finished. And there it is. So, tab. I'm on pre-bake. And I get that nice purple tinge to the tent mouth. So there's something going on here. So when viewed from a distance, it's like, oh, what's going on over there? That's creepy. That's a bit magical, a bit weird. Weird with a Y. Yeah. Quite like that. And there's the bunker in the distance. With a very shiny door. All the surrounding rocks and the shadows cast by that big light in the sky. It may be beneficial to add more light. See, the sky now doesn't fit the scene. I picked that nice deep red sky, but now I've got a poisonous green forest. So I'd like to change the sky, and I'd like to change the cavern. But not today, not because we're looking at lights right now. So that's position of lights, and that's the light map baker. I'm going to put a spotlight on here. Now let's escape back into the editor. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to get rid of that for now, and I'm going to look for something I can stick on the building which would be a good spotlight. So entities, add new entity. Now close down all the tabs, and we'll find something that would make a nice spotlight. Non-DLC, so boxes and barrels, unlikely. Bridges, no. Buildings, probably not. Cartoon, probably not. Classics, there'll be something in classics. Ancient Rome didn't have spotlights. Cartoons, there's houses, characters. Oh, some zombies and security guards. Nothing that screams forest, so we'll come back to, scientist maybe. There's a scientist in the bunker. So, let's take him and just pop him here for now. He's guarding the bunker. So, Cool. Satire. Those are forest creatures. Let's get a satire in the forest. I know I'm looking for lights here, but I'm just going to put these guys here because I'm going to come back to them in a future video. These will be the focus of the story. The scientist and the satire when worlds collide. Okie dokie. Let's have a look for this spotlight because I'm getting distracted again. Nope. Gore, nope. Historical, nope. Medieval, nope. Metro Theatre. Actually, yes. There's a ceiling light here and mezzanine wall sconce. This would probably be the most fitting, so we give that a double click and then rotate so it's facing the right direction and then place it in the scene. Let's have a look at this here. Where is it? Grab that and come in a bit. Move it till it's in contact with the wall. Now I think this is placed on a weird angle, so if I press G I can get a better idea of exactly where it is. It's yeah, it's a bit off kilter. So we get our widget and just rotate it slightly so it's flush to the wall. Well, as flush as you can be. The wall I believe is around 10 units thick, so it can take a little bit of going in without any going through. So there's that one. Now one on its own might look a bit weird, so if we put several, maybe one at each side of the door. So we grab him, stick him there, hold and shift, no, extract, hold and shift and click to place, which gives me another one of my cursor to put down over here. That's about equally spaced. If I hit G for a top down view and then just kind of have a little look, and then I can just get the pixels more accurate. There we go. That's a little off. That needs to go over slightly. Now, if I go to markers, scroll to the bottom and choose, let's say, a red spotlight. Plop him in the scene and rotate him until he points upwards or slightly towards the wall, and then position him kind of like the science is casting the light. So just get the light on the wall. There it is. Now this will take some tweaking. This is not something you can just do once and then it's successful. It'll take some trial and error, I suppose is the word. So you extract that, place another one down, come across and place another one down. So the effect I'm trying to go for is there's lights being cast up to the walls to make this thing more illuminated through the forest, but without it being overly so. Also, I don't want the bowls being lit up too much from underneath, because the idea is the lights are coming out of the top, and so I want them illuminating the walls and not the bowls. So let's just save that and then test game to see how it looks. Okay, launching test level. May as well mention while I'm here, this little screen shows you all the keyboard hotkeys you can use while you're in the test game to do different things, such as the tab controls, the left mouse button, right mouse button, etc. So now, as I'm approaching here, you can see a slight red light on the wall, because these are still dynamic lights. If I ran the light mapper, nothing there would change because they are dynamic, not static. I want them to be static, so I'm going to change them into static light soon. I see the scientist works, and he's staring at us as we walk past. And the satire is over there, just in the distance. You can see him through the green. So, Alexi test game. I will find my sciences, and I will go to properties, static mode. Yes. Now it's the same effect as clicking Y when you're placing. It becomes a red receptacle, and so the light mapper will use this information to bait lights into the scene. Now also on the test game, that wasn't strong enough, so I'm going to move it a little bit closer and rotate it a little more, so more lights hitting the wall like that, because even though I want it to be subtle, I want it to be noticeable. Notice the receptacle is now red because I've changed the property to static from dynamic. So quick save. I'll run the test game, and then I will run the light mapper. Now typically the light mapping process is something you'll do towards the end of a project once everything's in place, because then you can tweak the visuals to suit the effect you're going for. That said, it is useful to run some quick tests, because just like I've discovered, the sky I picked without lights in the scene is unsuitable for the scene now that it has lights and fog. So I will change that sky, and I actually will change it in this test game. Now, if you think you can't see any red, it's because you can't, because I changed them to static, and this is a pre-baked scene. So I will hold on shift and hit F3. I won't hit F3, I'll press F3. And while that's doing, I shall again pause the video, and I shall come back to it just as it's about to finish, if I can time it right, and we'll go from there. And here we are in the pre-baked scene. The red lights are now very much present, casting a slight tinge on the doorway too. And that is that. It's a nice scene, it's got some nice lighting, and we have inadvertently populated scientists and satires, which will be covered in the video after the next one. Until then, I can just say lights can be used sparingly to great effect, or I missed a bit of my rocks there. I would fill that in with more rocks. But you can use as many lights as your scene demands, but obviously the more lights you have, the more processing it takes to render those lights, but the nicer the result could eventually be. It's also worth noting that you can put two different colours of lights next to each other to get a nice blend of light in between. For example, if I could get past this guy, if this blue light was out here, it would mix with the red on the edges to create a very nice sort of purple colour. Bit of lens flare going on there, that's nice. And finally, the light mapper is a very good tool to use near the end of the project to get a good overview of the visuals, but it never hurts to run it once you have some basic lights in your scene, just to keep your pre-baked terrains kind of up to date, and so you get a good view of what's going on actually in the scene. Otherwise you don't want to get to the end and discover you've got lots of changes to make, because the scene looks a lot different once you've got light and fog all set up. Speaking of the sky, if S sunset's no good anymore, let's have a look at overcast or night. Much too bright. Gem world. Nope. Forest. Ah! Now then. This is much better. The fog is creating too much contrast in this case, so we can just decrease the fog distance so the scenery isn't quite so enshrouded in fog and it doesn't create such a harsh contrast line, because that was too much fog, but that's not so bad. That blends in quite nicely with this skybox, and so the world has suddenly got a lot bigger and we are merely a small part of it. This is very nice. This is much better. And on that foresty note, I shall end the video and I shall see you next time.